Hi guys, in this video I thought I'd have a go at making a little bunny cake topper. Now this one I've made from a drawing by Mitch Leewue, who's an artist that I follow. He's also created a YouTube video on this rabbit. You can watch his video by finding the link in the description box below. I've also put a link to his other pages where you can find him and his work. So I'm making this rabbit in modelling paste. I know everybody always says that they like to go by quantities, and I don't really work by quantities, so I've been trying to weigh things and I've had the scales in the corner here so you guys can see how much paste I'm using. The only thing is I actually ended up using far less paste than I did weigh out. So I've mixed myself a pale brown to start with, ready for creating the rabbit, and I'm going to pop that to one side. Then I'm going to take a little bit of green modelling paste and we're going to roll it into what looks like kind of a bit of a carrot shape, and then the fat end of the carrot we've made a tiny bit thinner. And I've got a purple modelling paste that we're going to roll into a teardrop. And I'm just going to play around moving this around just a little bit. Put a little hole in the base of it so we can slot that onto the end of the green part, which is going to be our paintbrush handle. And then let's put some lines into the brush end of our paintbrush. I'm going to roll thin some yellow modelling paste. I'm going to cut it to quite a thin strip, and that's going to wrap around the top end of our paintbrush. If it feels quite tacky, you can stick it on without using anything. If not, you can use water or edible glue to hold it in place. Just going to try and rub that seam off the back. I've just put it on some kitchen roll just so I can move it around out the way easily, but I'm also going to put a little bit of chocolate drip just on the end, and you don't have to use chocolate drip, it's just I think this one I'm going to put on a little cake where I've used the chocolate drip on the actual cake itself, so it will match nicely for me. So I'll move that to one side to leave it to set. Then we're going to start with our body. I weighed about 66 grams, but that's very rough, and actually you could get away with going a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to roll like a little fat sausage to start with, and then we're going to pull it thin up near the neck. And then a little bit further down, kind of below its chest, I'm going to press in also. I'm going to try and curve the back, so arching its back just a little bit, so we've got a bit of a bum stuck out the bottom. Now, I think it's a bit tall, so I'm just going to cut a little bit off the end. Oops, cornflour from my knife on the end there. So I'll try and thin it a bit more at the neck. So it goes in at the waist, out at the chest. Then I've got another piece for my feet. So for my feet, I've used about 22 grams of my modelling paste. So I'm going to roll that little oval-ish shape, and I'm going to cut it in half. Try and get it so it's thinner at one end and fatter at the other. The fat end is going to be the toes and the thinner end will be the heel. Then I'm just going to put in a couple of lines for my toes. And let's stick it up and over the top of the foot as well. So I haven't pressed too deep on this one. Just do the same with the other foot. And then I've got a long, thin kind of sausage shape, but just a small piece that goes like a little pad on its heel. Then we want 3 smaller ones that are going to go up sort of in between those toe lines that we've done. Again, I'm going to try and do the same on both feet so that they match. Then we want a pale bit of paste going down the rabbit's chest. If you want to mark on first where it's going to go, you can do. So nice and thin. We'll just cut it off at the bottom and the top. And we're going to have another oval. So I used about 15 grams of modelling paste for like the top part of the legs. I rolled an oval, squished it a little bit, and then we cut it in half like so. I'm just going to press in a little bit at the edge there, which is where it's going to attach to the bottom section of my body. A little bit of water just to secure it in place. The same on the other side, to give it a nice firm push against the side of the bottom. And then we're going to put a bit of water on the back of each foot down near the heel section. You might need to hold this for a few seconds to get it to stay in place. If they don't stick, just rest something against the feet until it's sort of set. Give it maybe 10-15 minutes. Let's just put a little line down the chest. Next, the head. I've got just under 50 grams for the head. I'm just going to start with a ball, and then we're going to push in about halfway up, leaving the top of the head a little bit flatter and what will be the nose bit sticking out. I'm going to press in a little bit with my fingers to create some eye sockets. Let's raise one eyebrow slightly more than the other. Just make sure the head's a little bit narrower at the top than at the bottom. I'm going to put a little hole in the base of my head, and can you see I've just pinched the top of my body really thin so that the top of the body will slot into that hole to hold our head on. Then I've just rolled a piece of really pale brown, nice and thin. It's kind of a rough oval shape, and we're just going to press that onto the bottom section of the face. And let's just put a tiny little sausage shape with kind of a point on either end in the middle of our nose area there. And I've got a small ball. This time I'm going to cut diagonally either side to make kind of a triangle. And that's just going to stick just in front of that other piece we've put on. So you'll just see the other piece above it. I want a line from the nose coming down towards the mouth. And then I'm going to swap and use the other end of my Dresden tool to open up a little mouth. Not too wide. Maybe a little indentation under there to match the picture. And then we want 2 tiny pieces of pink. I'm going to try and get them to an oval shape that's roughly the size of the underneath of that nose, so that little cut section there. And I'm just going to use the curved edge of my Dresden tool again to poke in just a little nostril. And I'm going to repeat it on the other side. And we want some little teeth, so I've just got a tiny ball of white. And then we're just going to try and put a little line up the middle. Now, these teeth are moving about a little bit for me. Then let's pop in some eye sockets, just using a little balling tool. Then I'm going to fill these eye sockets with a ball of white. So I'll try and get the ball of white a similar kind of shape to my eye socket. Let's give him a tiny little eyelid on each side. So just roll a tiny, tiny piece of the pale brown. And we're just going to push it against the top of the eye and then kind of just move it in place, curving it round to follow the shape of the eye. So similar kind of size and shape with some black now. Try and get a point on either end and we'll just move that around so it just sits under the eyelid that we've put on. Doing exactly the same on the other eye. If it doesn't stick, put some water down where you want it to go. I think one of my eyes is a little bit bigger than the other. So just a small oval of black, and it's going to gently drop it in with my finger and then just nudge it down a little bit bigger with the end of my Dresden tool. Let's do the same on the other eye. We're going to give him some eyebrows. So again, just a really thin piece for each eyebrow, this time in dark brown. We're going to put one a little bit higher than the other one. And then let's paint the iris on. So I'm starting with like a kiwi green. So it's quite a bright green. And then I think we need a bit of a darker one in there with it. So I'm going to keep going a little bit darker with my green. And then I'm going to go with the really dark green just to kind of outline the edge. You want a really nice thin brush. And then I'm just going over it with a bit of jade colour food colouring. Now this is just a tiny, tiny ball of white modelling paste. So just see if you can stick that in. And then an even smaller ball of paste to just go underneath. Now if you struggle to roll them small enough, you could put this in with white food colouring if you prefer. Let's stick him a little bit of hair on the top. Just a little curve of our brown modelling paste. So just a smaller one and then we'll put that on. Then we're going to attach his head with a little bit of water and we'll try and stick it onto the top of the body. So if your body doesn't fit into that hole, just see if you can pinch the body nice and thin, as long as it hasn't dried too much at this point. Now I'm just going to lay him on his back because we want to attach the paintbrush, and the paintbrush is quite heavy, and if he's upright it's going to fall down towards the bottom of his legs. So we'll put him on his back and hope we can get it to set in place this way. So I'm going to put some water kind of across his chest where I'm going to rest it, a little bit on the ends there, and I'm just going to push that on there. Now just try and balance it, and we're going to leave him laying down there for a little bit till it sets. About 8 grams for each arm should be plenty. You could probably get away with a little bit less as well if you wanted. So I'm just going to roll them. Can you see it's a little bit fatter at the paw end and a little bit thinner up near the shoulder? And I think that should just fit nicely on there. Do the same for both, and then we're going to put some little lines in the fat end for the paw. Just going to press just under the paw a little bit there. So plenty of water all underneath. I'm going to stick this one under my paintbrush first. So attach the hand to the paintbrush and then the thinner bit of the arm up onto that shoulder. And the bit of brown paste just behind his head is just a spare bit of brown that I've got that's kind of holding his head in place so that it doesn't drop backwards. Just while he's resting there. When he's dried, I'll move that. So the next one, again, the shoulder goes up kind of just under the face or under the chin, and the paw goes onto the paintbrush. Then we're going to make him some ears. So I've got some more brown. We're going to roll it thin, but I've left it slightly thicker at one side than the other. And then we're going to do some pink nice and thin. Let's roll them together. And the bits of black at the side were little whiskers that I rolled out, but I don't think I'm going to use them. So you can see from the side it's thick at the bottom, thin at the top. So let's try and cut out an ear shape. So pointy at the top, we'll go wide, and then we'll get a bit narrower as we come further down. It's kind of a leaf shape. See if we can do another one similar. So by keeping it thin at the top, it's not too heavy, and the thick bit at the bottom means it's easier to stick against the head. So I'm kind of folding each one at the bottom. Gives us a bit more shape, and then I'm going to cut some off because they're just a little bit too long. Just going to let them firm up just for a minute while I'm making the tail. So just the ball, we'll put a couple of little cuts into it so it looks a bit fluffier. You can put more in than I have done if you prefer. And I'm going to give it a really good push onto his bum. Then let's stick these ears on. So again, I've just used water, but I did have to hold them in place for sort of a minute for them to stick. They did want to move around a little bit. And you will need to balance these. If they're too far over on the sides, they might fall down or slide down the face. They seem to be staying. And then I'm actually going to use wire for the whiskers. So if you're going to eat this guy, you will need to remove his whiskers. So I've cut 6 pieces. And we're just going to push these in at this kind of the side of the nose on like the pale brown bit. I'm going to put 3 each side. If you want to curve them slightly, you can do. And this side as well. And go above and then below that first one that I put in. So just pop in all 6 whiskers. And you'll see I chose wire ones. Earlier I was going to use some black modelling paste ones. But I decided against that. The black was quite dark and also it was bending and changing shape a bit for me. So now I'm going to let him set overnight because he's still a little bit fragile at the moment. And then I'm going to pop him on top of my cake. And I will do another video for the actual cake itself. And a really big thank you to Mitch Leewue for allowing me to make a figure of one of his pictures. And remember, if you want to check out his work, you can find links in the description box below my video. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and more.